Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. This video is titled May 31st in Climate History. May 31st, 1934 was the hottest springtime day on record in the United States. About 20% of the U.S. was above 100 degrees that day. It was 109 in Iowa and Wisconsin, 108 in Minnesota, 107 in North Dakota, Nebraska, and Illinois, 104 degrees in Kansas, and 103 in Missouri. Springtime weather this hot is inconceivable now. In fact, it almost never gets that hot in the Midwest anymore, even during summer. 100-degree temperatures in the Midwest have become extremely rare in recent years. 1 million cattle had to be slaughtered on May 31st, 1934 because of the drought and feed shortages. And it was so hot that day, heat burned a hole in the radio man's trousers. The four hottest May 31st in the U.S. were 1934, 1895, 1913, and 1953. May 31st tended to be a much hotter day during the first half of the 20th century than it has been over the last 70 years. But 1913 wasn't just hot on May 31st. A few weeks later, on July 10, 1913, California set the world's record of 134 degrees. Temperatures at Greenland Ranch, California that week were 128, 129, 134, 129, 130, 131, and 127. The U.S. hasn't seen 130-degree temperatures in many decades. But it wasn't just hot in California that summer. The heat extended all across the country, and particularly in the Midwest. July 3, 1913, 81 dead, heat wave toll. Chicago's hospitals filled with persons stricken in streets. Temperatures 102 degrees in Chicago. This is a graph of the summer percent of days above 100 degrees at all Midwest U.S. Historical Climatology Network stations. As you can see, summers were much hotter in the Midwest prior to about 1960, and 1913 was one of their hotter summers. The two hottest summers were 1936 and 1934. The world's record temperature of 134 degrees was set in California during 1913. 1913 also brought some of the worst flooding in U.S. history. These pictures were taken in Ohio. The worst flooding in Texas history also occurred during 1913. This was the Brazos River in Richmond, Texas in 1913. The water was 56 feet deep. I bought my first home in Richmond, Texas, very close to where this picture was taken. The last time the water reached 50 feet in Richmond was 1992, shortly after I sold the home. All-time record heat and record flooding was the story of 1913. Now let's fast forward to 1985. May 31st, 1985 brought a tremendous tornado outbreak to the United States. More than 100 people died in tornadoes that day in Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, Ontario, and across the Midwest. 41 tornadoes killed 94 people, injured 1,000, and caused $282 million in damages in the Northeast. And there were many lives lost and massive damages in the Midwest from tornadoes that day too. This was the weather map from May 31st, 1985. Cold front brought cold, dry air which collided with very warm, moist air, and that's the scenario which causes tornadoes. You have to have cold air to get tornadoes, which is why we've had so many this year. This has been one of the coldest springs on record in the United States. And of course the press is engaging in their usual mass superstition and hysteria about what's causing the extreme weather. They're blaming the floods and tornadoes on global warming, when in fact it's cold that's causing them. And a few weeks ago, the press was saying the exact opposite. Washington Post, December 26, 2018. 2018 will be the first year with no violent tornadoes in the United States. According to the press, the 1 part per 10,000 increase in carbon dioxide over the last century causes no tornadoes, it causes lots of tornadoes. And in fact, they attempt to blame just about every phenomenon in nature on the tiny increase in carbon dioxide. The press refuses to talk to anyone who has accurate information about climate, and they keep parroting the same misinformation from the same dishonest academics over and over again. We live in very dark times with the press co-opted and corrupted like this. And it's really up to people like us using social media to set the record straight about climate. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for a long time.